Let's recap some of the facts and compare to the known laws of physics before we move on to other evidence that exposes the killer's true identities. Fact: both towers and Building 7 fell at free fall speed, or the acceleration of gravity, or nearly so. Fact: the contents of the buildings, other than the structural steel members, were reduced to dust, pulverized into particles, most of them as small as 100 microns. Now, the laws of physics dictate that every body continues in its state of rest or in a uniform motion in a right line unless it is compelled to change that state by forces impressed upon it. Other laws of physics, such as the conservation of energy and the conservation of momentum, dictate that in order for a mass, in this case the static weight or potential energy of the towers above the collapse initiation points, would decelerate in order to cause the mass below to accelerate towards the ground.
And we're going to look at position versus time. Okay, let me move this up a little bit here. Okay, notice that we have a fairly horizontal trend at the beginning. A horizontal line would indicate that the position of one is keeping equal distance ahead of the other. So in other words, we picked an object which was higher than the leading front of the wave, and so the wave front is like 35 meters lower. And notice that at the beginning it actually is getting less than 35 meters in front. So in other words, when it goes uphill like this, it means it's losing ground. So it's going a little slower than the free-falling object. Then it turns around and it goes faster than the free-falling object, coming back down. So on the average over this first half of the run, it's staying pretty well equal to the speed of the free-falling object. And then it jumps ahead. Remember, this is not an object that, so you'd say, how can it jump? Well, the explosions start happening sooner.
Here's a floor plan of Building 7. Now, to bring a building smoothly, symmetrically, into its own footprint without falling over, what we have to do is remove the core columns, because what we want to do is bring the outside of the building in on itself.
In other words, if gravity were the only force being applied to the static weight or potential energy above the collapse initiation points, it is a physical impossibility for them to collapse at the acceleration of gravity unless some other forces moved the mass below the point of collapse initiation out of the way. Now, if you add to that the energy required to pulverize the concrete, the other contents of the building, which included over 1,000 human beings in each tower, down to the size of 100 microns, and it becomes clear. Based on the known laws of physics, it is a fact that something other than an airliner impact and jet fuel fire caused the collapses of the World Trade Center towers. Fact: jet fuel does not explode. Period. It simply does not release its energy quickly enough to cause an explosion, unless it is compressed and vaporized, such as inside a jet engine. Jet fuel is nearly identical to kerosene. Do you think if kerosene vapors were explosive, that people would use kerosene heaters in their homes? Of course not. Notice the color and character of these jet fuel fireballs. Now we're going to compare to the explosions at the towers. At the point of ignition, you might find bright white and bright yellow, but as the oxygen around the fuel is consumed, it becomes a richer and richer mixture, which leads it to a color of black and dark orange. Notice the difference in blast velocity compared to the speed of the aircraft. This eliminates any possibility of a debris front being what is ejected from the right side of the building. That is not a jet fuel fireball. That is explosives. Notice also the difference in color and characteristic of this blast compared to a jet fuel fireball. And additionally, the white objects that are coming out of this explosion could not have been generated by a jet fuel fireball. And nothing in that airplane and nothing in that building burns that hot. Fact: jet fuel does not burn hot enough to melt or even weaken structural steel. However, molten steel was found below the towers 6 weeks after the attack.
This is how it's been since day one. Oh, it's unbelievable. And this is 6 weeks later, almost 6 weeks later. And as we get closer to the center of this, it gets hotter and hotter. It's probably 1,500 degrees. We've had some small windows into what we thought was the core at some point, and it looked like an oven. You know, it was just roaring inside. And it was just a bright reddish orange color. See that stuff he's pulling out?
What was that, Chief?
We're gonna hold off on the water. See the stuff he's pulling out?
Yeah.
It's red hot. If we hit it too much steam, you won't be able to see what he's doing.
Great.
There is nothing inside those buildings and nothing on board that aircraft that will burn hot enough to melt steel. Period. This is proof that something other than a jet fuel fireball caused the steel to be melted. Let's move on to just a few facts regarding aircraft performance limitations. Aircraft, like high-rise buildings, are subjected to the known laws of physics. It is necessary that aircraft have certain design limitations in their specifications so that they do not fall out of the sky. VMO is velocity max operating. At 31,000 feet, it's roughly 350 knots indicated airspeed. All 4 aircraft from 9/11 are alleged to have been traveling over 500 knots. Let's check out Boeing's specifications and what they say about VMO and design maneuvering speed. To put it more simply, a school bus is not going to win the Daytona 500, nor is it going to take a canyon road at high speed. One more time. Wide-body airliners are not capable of flying 500 knots below 10,000 feet. They are in fact quite fragile and don't stand a chance of even penetrating the Pentagon or the World Trade Center towers. Jet fuel does not explode. And building collapses look like this, not like this. Jet fuel burns approximately the same temperature as the hottest office fires. And fire has never caused a high-rise building to collapse until 9/11. There is nothing on board an airliner and nothing within a high-rise that can cause this river of molten steel that's pouring off the side of the towers just prior to collapse. And nothing to cause the molten pools of steel found 6 weeks later in the basements. No matter how difficult it might be to accept, the media broadcasts have all been proven to be a pathetic attempt at a mass hoax. Now we're going to hear about what really happened on 9/11.